Have you ever laughed at someone you criticize and then felt confused about why you laughed? Have you ever judged a public figure so strongly that your reaction felt bigger than the actual moment? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are using a short comedy moment as a mirror for something deeply spiritual and deeply human. In the clip titled "I Can Relate with President Trump," Trevor Noah jokes about the surprising moment of recognizing a familiar human behavior in someone you normally would not want to identify with. We are not here to argue politics. We are here to study the mind. Because awakening is not only about meditation cushions and quiet rooms. Awakening is also about the moment you notice your own projection. Wisdom is the ability to see what is happening inside you without lying to yourself. Compassion is what keeps that honesty from turning into self-hatred. Practice is what turns insight into a new destiny. And karma, in this context, is the simple cause and effect of what you repeatedly feed in your attention. Two truths will guide this story. First, the people we react to the most often carry a hidden mirror for parts of ourselves we do not want to see. Second, the moment you can laugh and say "I relate," you create a tiny crack in the armor of your identity. And that crack is a doorway to freedom. Now let me tell you a story that lives inside this theme. There was a person named Miles. Miles was smart, witty, and very online. Miles could debate. Miles could criticize. Miles could spot hypocrisy from far away. He cared about being a good person, and he cared about being seen as a good person. That second part matters more than most people admit, because the hunger to be seen as good can become another kind of ego. Miles had one habit that looked like strong principles but felt like inner tension. He had a list of public figures he could not stand. He would see a headline, feel he tries in the chest, and then start typing. He would share clips, make jokes, argue in comment sections, and then walk away feeling both satisfied and strangely empty. Satisfaction is not the same as peace. One evening Miles was scrolling and saw the short clip from Trevor Noah. The title alone made him roll his eyes, because he assumed it would be another political joke. But he watched anyway. He laughed. A real laugh, not a polite one. Then he froze, because the laugh was followed by a weird feeling. Wait, why did I relate to that? In the clip, the humor comes from a moment of recognizing a very human behavior in someone you normally keep in the category of other. Miles felt his mind immediately try to protect his identity. It is just comedy. It does not mean anything. I still disagree with everything. But the body had already received a message. The message was not political. The message was psychological. You are not as separate as you think. And that sentence scared Miles, because his whole sense of safety depended on separation. He felt safe when he could say, "I am not like them. I am better. I would never. I am on the right side. I am the kind of person who sees clearly." That identity felt like armor. But armor is heavy. The next day Miles kept thinking about the laugh. He told himself it was nothing. Yet the laugh stayed in his mind like a bell. So Miles did what many people do when they feel uncomfortable inside. He tried to drown it. He found more content, more arguments, more debates. He tried to return to the familiar place where he felt superior. But something had shifted. The superior feeling did not land the same. It felt more brittle, like a mask that had started slipping. A week later, Miles met his friend Jay for coffee. Jay had a calm presence. Not because Jay never got upset, but because Jay was less addicted to being right. Miles mentioned the clip, half joking, and admitted it was weird to relate to someone he normally disliked. Jay nodded and said something simple. Relating does not mean agreeing. Relating means recognizing human nature. Miles frowned. He wanted a sharper answer, something that would keep the world cleanly divided. But Jay continued. When you recognize human nature, you become harder to manipulate, because manipulation feeds on identity. Identity says, "I must hate them to prove I am good." Identity says, "I must never admit similarity because that would contaminate me." But wisdom says I can disagree with actions and still recognize the same emotions and insecurities that exist in all humans. Miles felt annoyed. Annoyed is often the first sign that a teaching is touching something real. Miles asked Jay what this had to do with spirituality. Jay said it had everything to do with awakening. Awakening is when you stop living inside a trance of us versus them. Miles wanted to argue. He said there are real differences. People do real harm. We should not blur that. Jay nodded. Yes. Differences matter. Harm matters. Boundaries matter. Accountability matters. Compassion does not mean denial. But hatred is not the same as accountability. Hatred is often your own suffering trying to feel powerful. Miles went quiet, because that line pointed directly at his own experience. After a long session of angry scrolling, he did not feel clean. He felt agitated. His sleep got worse. His conversations became sharper. His mind became more suspicious. The world felt more threatening. That is karma. Not cosmic. Practical. Feed outrage. Harvest agitation. Feed superiority. Harvest loneliness. Feed contempt. Harvest bitterness. Now the story deepens. Because Miles began noticing a pattern. The public figures he reacted to were not random. They activated specific emotions in him. One figure triggered his fear of chaos. Another triggered his shame about being ordinary. Another triggered his anger about unfairness. Another triggered his jealousy toward power. Miles realized he was not only reacting to them, he was reacting to what they represented inside his own psyche. This is shadow work, but we will say it in plain language. The shadow is what you refuse to admit exists in you. So you only see it outside. When you only see it outside, you become possessed by it. Miles did not want to admit he had a shadow. He wanted to believe he was a clean person with clean motives. But the moment he laughed at the clip and felt the sting of recognition, the shadow had already introduced itself. The shadow is not evil. The shadow is disowned human nature. So Miles tried a practice that Jay suggested. Every time he felt a strong reaction to a public figure, he would pause and ask one question. What is the emotion in me right now? Not what is the opinion. Not what is the argument. The emotion. The next time he saw a clip and felt the surge, he paused. He felt tightness in the chest. He felt heat in the face. He felt a forward-leaning energy. Like the mind wanted to attack. He named it. Anger is here. Then he asked a second question. What is this anger protecting? Protecting is a word that changes everything. Because it moves you from condemnation to understanding. Understanding does not excuse harm. Understanding helps you respond with wisdom instead of being driven by blind reaction. Miles realized his anger often protected a desire for safety. He felt threatened by uncertainty. When he saw someone behave confidently, even recklessly, it triggered his fear that the world was out of control. That fear was not new. It came from childhood, from moments where adults were unpredictable, where rules changed, where safety depended on reading the room. So his nervous system learned a strategy. Control through certainty. Certainty through being right through attacking the wrong. This strategy made him feel powerful for a moment. Then it made him exhausted. Miles began to see his own karma pattern. Fear arises. He seeks certainty. He attacks. He feels brief relief. Then the world still feels uncertain. So he attacks again. That cycle is samsara in modern clothing. The wheel of repetitive suffering driven by craving and aversion. Craving for certainty. Aversion to discomfort. The next time Miles watched comedy that poked at a powerful figure, he noticed something. The laugh itself was a relief because laughter loosened identity. Laughter said you do not have to be a warrior every second. Laughter said you can see human absurdity without clenching your jaw. This is why humor can be spiritual. Not because everything is a joke, but because humor reveals imprimitures. The ego wants to be fixed and serious and unquestionable. Humor says maybe not. Humor creates space. Space is freedom. Now Miles faced a deeper challenge. He realized he was afraid that if he stopped hating the right targets, he would become passive or immoral. This fear is common. People think compassion makes you weak, but compassion without wisdom is naive. Wisdom without compassion is cruel. The path is both. So Miles created a new inner rule. I can oppose actions without poisoning my heart. Poisoning the heart is optional. Opposing harm is sometimes necessary. So he practiced. When he felt triggered, he would pause before reacting. He would breathe once. He would name the emotion. He would ask what it protected. Then he would choose a response that matched his values, not his impulse. Sometimes the response was to donate to a cause he believed in. Sometimes it was to have a calm conversation with a real person in his life, not a faceless stranger online. Sometimes it was to log off and regulate his body with a walk, because a dysregulated body produces extreme certainty. Sometimes it was to read more deeply, because surface outrage often feeds on shallow information. This is right effort. Effort guided by wisdom. Over months, Miles noticed his mind felt less trapped. He still cared about the world. He still had opinions. But he was not owned by every wave. He also noticed something that surprised him. He became kinder in daily life. Because when you stop feeding contempt, you have more patience for ordinary humans. You stopped reading strangers as enemies. You stopped reading family disagreements as war. You stopped reading yourself like a failure for having emotion. This is where the compassionate brain grows. Compassion begins outward, but it also turns inward. Miles realized he had been using political and cultural battles as a way to avoid his own inner discomfort. When he slowed down, he finally faced his own insecurity. The insecurity said, I need to be special to be safe. This is a deep human craving. It can hide behind many masks, including moral superiority. Miles began practicing a different truth. I can be ordinary and still worthy. This is choosing yourself. Choosing yourself means you stop using external enemies to stabilize your identity. You stop proving goodness by hatred. You start building goodness through practice, through real actions, through kindness, through boundaries, through steady effort. Now let us bring this back to the core idea of relating to someone you criticize. Relating is not endorsement. Relating is humility. Humility is not self-humiliation. Humility is recognizing that the same human mechanisms exist in you, even if you express them differently. When you recognize this, you gain 3 kinds of power. You gain the power to change yourself, because you stop pretending you are above human nature. You gain the power to understand others, which makes your responses more effective and less reactive. You gain the power to keep your heart clean, which protects your peace and therefore protects your long-term ability to act wisely. That is destiny. Destiny is not only elections or headlines or what famous people do. Destiny is what your attention does to your nervous system every day. If you spend your life marinating in contempt, your destiny becomes bitterness. If you spend your life practicing awareness, your destiny becomes clarity. If you spend your life training compassion with boundaries, your destiny becomes strength. Now I want to close with a scene that completed Miles' transformation. One night Miles watched another short clip and felt the old irritation rise. He was about to type. Then he paused. He noticed his heart was racing. He noticed he was tired. He noticed he had skipped dinner. He noticed he had been doom scrolling for an hour. He realized this was not wisdom. This was a stressed body looking for a target. So he did something simple. He put the phone down. He drank water. He ate. He went for a short walk. He breathed. Then he asked himself one honest question. What kind of person do I want to become, regardless of what public figures do? That question is awakening, because it returns power to you. It returns karma to you. It returns the path to you. In the comments, I want you to share something real. Have you ever related to someone you normally criticize? Not because you agree, but because you saw a human moment. And what did it reveal about you? Also share one small practice you want to try the next time you feel triggered. One breath, one pause, one moment of naming the emotion instead of feeding the story. If you want more long-form stories that blend psychology and Buddhist wisdom into daily practice, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and stay with us. Thank you for being here with me. See you in the next video.